The first thing you learn when you live on the edge of the continent is how to read the wind. Not for the weather, not anymore. We read it for the smell. When it blows from the west, from the inland swamps and the struggling towns, it carries the familiar scent of decay, the sweet, cloying rot of flooded marsh grass, and the metallic tang of slowly rusting infrastructure. But when it shifts and blows in from the east, from the open Atlantic, it carries a new smell. It's a clean, sterile scent, like the air after a lightning strike, mixed with the faint green aroma of hydroponic labs. It is the scent of the future. And it's the smell of the place that is slowly, methodically, making us obsolete. They call it the Meridian Project. We just called it the Line. It's a string of gleaming white hexagonal islands floating on the horizon, a man-made archipelago of impossible perfection, just 12 miles offshore. At night, its lights outshine the moon, a constant, silent rebuke to our own flickering, failing power grid. The Meridian Project isn't just a new development. It's a new chapter in human history, and we are the chapter that is being torn out to make room for it. The choice for a Floridian is no longer about moving to a safer county. The choice is now more fundamental. Do you stay on the land, or do you abandon it for the sea? My name is Ben, and I'm a creature of the land. My job is a new one, born from the death of the old world. I'm a licensed mainland salvager. In simpler terms, I'm a bone picker for a dying state. The official maps now have vast swaths of the coast designated as managed retreat zones. These are places where the cost of maintaining roads, power, and seawalls has officially exceeded the value of the property tax base. So the state cuts them loose. My job is to go in before a zone is permanently abandoned, into the homes and businesses left behind, and strip out anything of value. Copper wiring, industrial-grade circuit breakers, antique heart pine flooring, anything that can be repurposed or sold back to the struggling communities in the designated viable inland corridors. I am, in essence, a professional witness to the end of the Florida dream. Today, I'm working in what used to be a town called Boca Grande, a barrier island that was once a bastion of old money and world-class tarpon fishing. Now it's a ghost. The main street is a permanent, shallow canal of brackish water. The banyan trees, their roots drowned in salt, are skeletal and gray. I'm in a 2-story waterfront home, or what's left of it. The first floor is a swamp. The air is thick with mosquitoes and the smell of mildewed plaster. I'm on the second floor prying the last of the copper plumbing from a bathroom wall. From the gaping hole where a hurricane-proofed window used to be, I have a perfect, unobstructed view of the line. It shimmers in the afternoon heat, a stark, geometric miracle against the deep blue of the Atlantic. It feels less like a place and more like an accusation. They started building it 10 years ago, the brainchild of a tech billionaire and his corporation, Helios Sustainable Development. The pitch was audacious, to solve the climate crisis not by fighting it, but by rendering it irrelevant. They engineered a new way to live. The Meridian Project is a network of interconnected floating platforms, each one a self-contained neighborhood. They are designed to be the most resilient human habitats ever created. The outer platforms act as a massive energy-generating breakwater, their constant bobbing in the waves creating all the power the city needs. They can rise and fall with the tides, and in the face of a Category 5 hurricane, the entire city can partially submerge itself, allowing the storm's fury to pass harmlessly overhead. They have no soil, but they produce all their own food in vertical hydroponic farms that glow with a soft purple light at night. They recycle 100% of their water and waste. The city is managed by a benevolent artificial intelligence named Aura, who controls everything from the silent, autonomous transport pods that glide along the pristine white pathways to the nutrient balance in the aquaculture pods. It is a closed-loop system of perfect sustainability and perfect control. You don't buy a house on Meridian. The concept of land ownership, they say, is an archaic and destructive relic of the past. Instead, you buy a residency share in the Helios Corporation.
The cost is astronomical, but it gets you more than a place to live. It gets you membership. It comes with a guaranteed job within the Helios ecosystem, free health care at their state-of-the-art medical facilities, and a spot for your kids in their elite educational programs. It is a cradle-to-grave corporate society, a perfectly curated life free from the chaos, the risk, and the decay that defines my world on the mainland. It's a technological Eden, and the price of admission is your life savings, your absolute loyalty to the corporation, and the severing of your ties to the messy, unpredictable world of the land. As I coil up the last of the copper pipe, my tablet buzzes. It's the daily news feed. The top story is a promotional piece from Helios celebrating the arrival of the 10,000th resident to the line. A video starts playing automatically. A young woman with bright, intelligent eyes stands on a balcony that looks like it was molded from a single piece of polished shell. Behind her, the view is of a crystal-clear turquoise lagoon in the center of a platform surrounded by lush, vertical gardens. Her name is Leela. The caption says she's a marine biologist, one of the new residents. "The first thing you notice is the air," she says, her voice filled with a genuine, unscripted sense of wonder. There's no dust, no pollen, no smog. It's just clean. And the quiet. There are no cars, no sirens. You just hear the wind and the water and the hum of the city, which is more of a feeling than a sound. It's the feeling of everything working perfectly. The camera follows her as she walks through her new world. She swipes her wristband to summon a transport pod. She visits a food hall where she picks fresh vegetables from a living wall. She dives into the central lagoon, a protected marine sanctuary where she'll be working, studying coral reef regeneration in a world where natural reefs are all but extinct. "Back on the mainland," she says, her expression turning serious for a moment, "we spent all our time and energy trying to hold back the tide, trying to patch a system that was fundamentally broken. We lived with a constant, low-grade sense of anxiety, the fear of the next storm, the next flood, the next insurance bill. Here," she smiles, a brilliant, relieved expression, "here, there's no anxiety. The system is designed for permanence. Helios hasn't just built a city, they've built peace of mind. It's not about escaping the world, it's about building a better one." I shut the video off, my thumb jabbing the screen with more force than necessary. Peace of mind. It's easy to have peace of mind when you've paid a fortune to live in a fortress, leaving the rest of us to salvage the ruins of the world you left behind. My world. I pack up my gear, my boots squelching in the muck of the first floor. Outside, the sun is beginning to set, casting long, distorted shadows from the skeletal trees. The tide is coming in, and the water on the main street is rising. I load the salvaged pipes into my flat-bottomed skiff, my ride back to the viable corridor. As I start the engine, I take one last look at the house. Someone had painted a message on the wall in crude black letters, a final defiant scream before they left. "The sea can have it." The journey back is a slow, mournful navigation through a graveyard of town. I pass the submerged marina, the masts of sunken sailboats looking like crosses in a cemetery. I see the steeple of a church, its bell long silenced, sticking out of the water. This was someone's home. Generations of people lived here, fished here, fell in love here. They didn't all have peace of mind, but they had a life. They had a community, a history. Helios didn't build a better world. They built a lifeboat for the rich and set the rest of us adrift. As I clear the last of the barrier islands and head into the open channel, the full expanse of the Meridian Project comes into view, its lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settles. It is beautiful. I can't deny it. It's a stunning, audacious achievement. It's a vision of humanity not just surviving, but transcending. 12 miles away, Leela is standing on her balcony watching the same sunset from the other side. She has just finished her first day of work. She spent the afternoon tagging juvenile turtles in the sanctuary, a job she could only have dreamed of on the mainland, where her work consisted mostly of writing reports on collapsing coastal ecosystems. She feels a profound sense of gratitude, a feeling so pure and overwhelming it's almost dizzying. This is what it feels like to be on the right side of history. But as she looks west, at the long, dark smudge of the continent dissolving into the twilight, she feels a strange, unexpected pang. It's a feeling she can't quite name. It's not guilt, not exactly. It's a sense of separation, of a connection lost. She thinks of the people back there, the ones who couldn't leave, the ones who were left behind. She tells herself that Meridian is the answer, that its success will eventually trickle down, that the technology developed here will one day save everyone else. She has to believe that.
The uneasy peace between the land and the sea held for a season. From my skiff in the murky waters of the retreat zones, I watched Meridian, the city of light, a testament to an unshakable belief in technological salvation. From her balcony on that city of light, Leela watched the mainland, a bruised and broken shoreline, a problem that human ingenuity had apparently solved by leaving it behind. We were two worlds in a single orbit, held apart by the gravity of wealth and circumstance. But the ocean that separated us was not a void. It was a living, changing thing, and it was about to remind both of our worlds that nothing stays separate forever. It began subtly, a strange, greasy slick on the surface of the water, a gray, filmy substance that clung to my hull and the roots of the dead mangroves. We called it the gray bloom. It wasn't like the red tides or the algae blooms we were used to. This stuff was different. It was corrosive. It ate through fishing nets with an unnatural speed. It peeled the paint from channel markers. Within a few months, it was a pervasive, creeping plague, a new layer of decay on our already dying world. The few remaining mainland engineers said it was reacting with the high salinity and industrial pollutants, creating a kind of hyper-corrosive acid. For us, it was just another hardship, another gear grinding in the slow, inevitable collapse. On Meridian, however, a hardship was a system failure. The gray bloom was not something their models had predicted. It began to appear on the sensors of their subaquatic drones, a biological anomaly their AI, Aura, could not classify. At first, it was a curiosity. Leela and her team of marine biologists were tasked with studying it. They collected samples in sterile containment fields, analyzed its genome, and were baffled. It seemed to be a chimeric organism, a terrifying hybrid of a natural marine fungus and something else, something with fragments of synthetic polymers in its very cellular structure. While the scientists were baffled, the city's maintenance drones were beginning to report a crisis. The bloom was adhering to the submerged biopolymer surfaces of the platforms, slowly, patiently, eating them. It was clogging the delicate membranes of the desalination intakes. It was fouling the massive thermal exchange conduits that regulated the city's temperature and were critical to its power supply. The perfect closed-loop system had sprung a leak, and the messy, unpredictable reality of the ocean was pouring in. Helios Corporation responded as it always did, with overwhelming technological force. They deployed fleets of sonic cleansing drones that blasted the platforms with high-frequency waves. They released targeted chemical agents designed to neutralize the bloom. But the bloom adapted. It seemed to thrive on the energy of the sonic waves. The chemicals only appeared to make it stronger, more aggressive. For the first time since its inception, the city of Meridian was facing a problem it couldn't solve. The daily reports sent to residents, usually a relentlessly upbeat stream of data on energy efficiency and productivity, began to include a new, carefully worded metric: external biothreat mitigation. Leela's work became the single most critical project on the entire archipelago. She was no longer just a researcher, she was a firefighter, and the fire was spreading. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. A series of cascading power failures flickered across the northern platforms.
Aura, the city's AI, traced the problem to a critical drop in efficiency in the primary thermal conduit, a colossal pipe that drew cold water from the deep ocean. A deep-sea drone inspection revealed the terrifying truth. The gray bloom was not just clinging to the conduit, it was consuming it. The specific proprietary alloy the pipe was made of, an alloy designed a decade ago to withstand deep-sea pressures, was uniquely vulnerable to the bloom's corrosive properties. The conduit was failing, and without it, a third of the city would lose power. This is where my world and hers were destined to collide. The leadership at Helios faced a nightmare. Their own advanced fabrication units couldn't replicate the alloy. The process was archaic, requiring a specific set of physical molds and material treatments that had been phased out years ago. The company that had designed and built the original conduit, a specialized marine engineering firm, had gone bankrupt 5 years prior. Its research facility, a sprawling campus on the mainland, now sat deep inside a managed retreat zone, a place long since surrendered to the rising water and the decay. It was a ghost facility in a ghost town. Helios's sleek, autonomous drones couldn't operate there. The terrain was too chaotic, the structures too unstable. The EM interference from the decaying grid was too high. They needed a ghost to navigate a graveyard. They needed a salvager. The offer came to me through a series of encrypted, anonymous messages, passed down a chain of contractors and subcontractors until it reached my tablet. The pay was obscene, more than I made in a year. The mission was simple: retrieve any and all data, schematics, and physical material samples related to the Neptune 7 alloy from the abandoned Westinghouse Marine Solutions facility in the Calusa Retreat Zone. The client was anonymous, but I knew there was only one entity with that kind of money and that specific problem. I was being hired by the gods on the horizon to go into hell and bring back a piece of their past. I accepted. On the day of the mission, a Helios transport skiff, a vessel that looked more like a stealth fighter than a boat, met me at the edge of the viable corridor. It was piloted by a silent, uniformed Helios employee who didn't make eye contact. He took me to a rendezvous point in the open ocean, and that's where I met her, Leela. She was standing on the deck of a larger research vessel, dressed in a pristine white Helios environmental suit, looking profoundly out of place against the backdrop of the gray, slick-covered water. Her expression was a mixture of clinical focus and deep-seated apprehension. The briefing was tense. She was the mission's chief science officer. I was the extraction specialist. Her job was to oversee the retrieval and ensure any biological samples of the bloom we encountered were properly contained. My job was to get us in and out without dying. She looked at my rusty skiff, my patched-up waders, and my collection of pry bars and cutting torches with an expression of thinly veiled horror. I looked at her delicate, sensor-laden scanner and her array of sterile containment fields with a matching sense of contempt. We were two alien species forced into a single claustrophobic terrarium. The journey into the Calusa zone was a descent. We left the clean, open water behind and entered a maze of submerged streets and collapsing buildings. Leela was silent, her eyes wide, taking in the raw, unfiltered reality of the world hers had rendered obsolete. I could see her through the reflection in her helmet, her scientific detachment slowly being eroded by the sheer visceral spectacle of the decay. For her, this was data, a field study of a collapsed ecosystem. For me, it was Tuesday. We reached the Westinghouse facility, a sprawling campus of concrete buildings being slowly devoured by the swamp. We docked the skiff and made our way inside, our headlamps cutting through the gloom. The place was a ruin. Water lapped at our knees. Files and blueprints were a pulpy, worthless sludge. Aura's satellite scans indicated the primary research vault is on the 3rd floor in the West Wing. It was designed to be airtight and shielded. It took us an hour of prying through rusted doors and navigating collapsed corridors, but we found it. The vault was intact. Using a portable power cell, I managed to get the electronic lock open. The air that hissed out was stale, but dry. Inside was a time capsule. Racks of physical data drives, schematics sealed in vacuum tubes, and in a refrigerated, lead-lined container, a collection of metallic samples. This was the prize. This was what would save Meridian. As I worked on retrieving the samples, Leela moved to a bioresearch station in the corner of the vault. The station's independent power source had kept its terminal in a low-power hibernation. She managed to boot it up. "Ben, come look at this," she said, her voice suddenly strained. The screen was filled with research logs, chemical formulas, and a project title that made my blood run cold. Project Chimera, self-replicating, hydrocarbon-consuming microbe. Client, Helios Sustainable Development. We stared at the screen, the hum of the old terminal, the only sound in the vault. The logs told the whole story. 10 years ago, before Meridian was even fully operational, Helios had commissioned this lab to secretly develop a microbe to clean up oil spills. The project, Chimera, was a failure. The microbe was too aggressive, too adaptable. It had escaped containment during a hurricane that had breached the facility years ago. The logs detailed its properties, its ability to bond with synthetic polymers, its rapid mutation when exposed to industrial pollutants, and its corrosive effect on certain.
The darkness in the vault was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket broken only by the cold, digital glow of the terminal screen and the twin beams of our headlamps cutting frantic paths through the black. Outside, the rhythmic thumping of the Helios security drone was a mechanical heartbeat counting down our final seconds. The voice from the comm unit had not repeated its message. It didn't need to. We were no longer assets on a mission. We were liabilities in a quarantine zone, loose ends in a corporate conspiracy that stretched back a decade. Leela was hyperventilating, her scientific mind so brilliant in a world of order, now overwhelmed by the raw, brutal chaos of the situation. Her high-tech scanner was useless. Her comms were jammed. The perfect, elegant systems of her world had been shut down, leaving her powerless. "They're going to leave us here," she whispered, her voice tight with panic. "Or worse." "Worse is their specialty," I grunted, kicking a rusted filing cabinet out of my way. My mind was racing, not with fear, but with a salvager's familiar calculus of decay and opportunity. A building, like a body, has arteries and veins. It has a skeletal structure. And a vault, for all its strength, is still just a box inside that body. Helios built this place, but they only know the version that's on their schematics, I said, shining my light along the floor, then up the walls. They don't know the version that's been rotten for 15 years. They don't know the scars. Leela looked at me, her face pale in the beam of my light. "What are you talking about?" Every one of these old coastal facilities had a sublevel, a utility conduit for storm surge overflow. It's not on any public plan because it was a design flaw, a dirty secret they buried, but the bones of it is still here. I pulled a diamond-tipped cutting saw from my pack. It was loud, crude, and powered by a gas engine, a relic from another century compared to her silent energy cells. But in a world where the power had been cut, the relic was king. For the next hour, the only sound was the screaming protest of the saw against reinforced concrete, a desperate act of industrial archaeology. We broke through into a dark, narrow space that smelled of rust and stagnant water. It was the old overflow conduit. It was our way out. The escape was a nightmare of tight spaces and rising water, a journey through the building's forgotten guts. We emerged, covered in grime and filth, into the flooded ground floor, half a building away from the sealed vault. The thumping of the drone was still there, but it was further away now, circling the last place they thought we could be. We made it back to my skiff, a ghost slipping away from a tomb. and I pushed the engine to its limit, fleeing into the labyrinthine maze of the retreat zone. We were fugitives. There was no going back to Meridian for Leela, and every official port on the mainland was now a trap. We were two people caught in the dead space between two worlds, with a truth so explosive it could shatter them both. I knew only one place to go, a place not on any official map, a small, stubborn island of resilience deep in the Everglades, a community the state had long ago written off, which was the only thing that had allowed it to survive. It was a settlement of salvagers, tinkerers, and other assorted ghosts of the old Florida, a place we called the Patchwork. Leela's arrival in the Patchwork was like a scene from a science fiction film. Her in her torn but still gleaming white Helios suit, stepping out of my rusty skiff into a village built from the scavenged bones of the world she had left behind. Homes made from shipping containers and the hulls of old boats, powered by a jury-rigged grid of solar panels stripped from abandoned developments. Here, the currency was skill, ingenuity, and a shared, profound distrust of the world that had discarded them. For the first time, Leela was the alien. Her knowledge of genomic sequencing and theoretical marine biology was useless here. What mattered was knowing how to splice a wire, how to purify water, how to read the clouds for a coming storm. The power dynamic between us had been completely inverted. She was no longer the mission commander. She was a refugee. We spent our days in a makeshift lab, a shielded container powered by a car battery, frantically working to analyze the data we had stolen. The community, initially suspicious of her, slowly came to see the value in her knowledge when it was paired with their own practical skills. They helped us build a signal amplifier from old satellite dishes. They brought us samples of the gray bloom, showing us where it grew thickest, how it behaved at different tides, a kind of ecological wisdom that couldn't be gathered by a drone. And as we worked, we argued. Our two worlds collided in that stuffy metal box. "We have to release the data," Leela insisted, her face illuminated by the glow of the data drive. "We can send it to the Global Press Syndicate. Once the world knows what Helios did, they'll be forced to act. The system will hold them accountable." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "What system, Leela? You still don't get it. Helios is the system. They'll call it a hoax, a corporate espionage smear campaign. They'll say we're terrorists. They control every official channel. Information won't save us. So what do, Ben? Just hide here forever while the world outside rots?" "No," I said, pointing to a set of chemical formulas on the screen. It was from the failed experiment, a section on abandoned countermeasures. "We don't give them information. We give them a cure, or the key to one. The research they abandoned wasn't just about the microbe, it was about how to kill it. That's our leverage. We don't just expose the arsonist, we show up with the only fire extinguisher in town." The idea was audacious, a piece of low-tech, asymmetrical warfare. Using the signal amplifier they'd helped us build, we bypassed Meridian's sophisticated firewalls by broadcasting on an old, forgotten frequency, an emergency maritime radio channel. It was a ghost signal, a voice from the past invading the pristine digital silence of the future. The broadcast wasn't a data dump, it was a message from Leela herself, spoken directly to the 10,000 residents of Meridian. She told them everything: the origin of the gray bloom, the corporate cover-up, the lie at the heart of their perfect city. She told them about the failing conduits, about the slow creeping decay that their own leaders had caused and were now powerless to stop. The broadcast created a panic, a system-wide crisis of faith. Aura, the city's AI, tried to shut it down, but the message was being shared on private, encrypted channels between residents. For the first time, the citizens of Meridian looked out at the decaying mainland not with pity or contempt, but with a terrifying sense of connection. Their fates were linked. Then came our offer. We told them that the key to developing an antidote,
The original research that held the solution was here, on the mainland. We would share it, but not with the corporate leadership. We would share it in exchange for a treaty, a new pact between the land and the sea. We demanded the resources to build research outposts on the mainland, a transfer of technology, and the creation of a joint council of mainland and Meridian residents to oversee the cleanup and the future of the coast. We were not asking for a rescue. We were demanding a partnership. The reaction on Meridian was a full-blown civil insurrection. The illusion of benevolent, omniscient corporate care was shattered. Residents, realizing they were trapped in a city being slowly eaten by its own sins, staged protests in the pristine plazas. Engineers and scientists began a work stoppage, refusing to maintain the city's systems until the Helios leadership stepped down and negotiated. Faced with a revolt from within and an ecological catastrophe from without, the corporation folded. The future that was born from that moment was not the perfect, sterile utopia that Helios had sold, nor was it the slow, grinding apocalypse that the mainland had been suffering. It was something new, something messy, and something far more real. The reckoning, as it came to be known, led to the fall of the old Helios board and the formation of the Joint Restoration Council. I became one of the first mainland representatives on that council. Leela, now hailed as a hero on Meridian, became its lead scientist. The hard border between our worlds dissolved, replaced by a constant, complicated flow of people and resources. Meridian's transport skiffs, once symbols of separation, now ferry mainland engineers to the floating city's advanced labs. Our salvaged boats carry Meridian scientists to the coastal zones to deploy the new, jointly developed antimicrobial agent. The work is slow, arduous, and fraught with the tension and mistrust of two coaches forced into an uneasy alliance. I stand now on a newly constructed causeway, a permanent bridge of steel and polymer that physically links the coast to the first of Meridian's now moored platforms. It's a research outpost, a hybrid of my world's gritty resourcefulness and hers. The air here is a mix of the old and the new, the scent of salt and rust, but also the clean hum of advanced atmospheric processors. Leela stands next to me, her white Helios uniform replaced by a simple set of work coveralls.